Your Partner in Success Radio is a free business podcast with host Denise Griffitts. It's all about great stories, conversation, and context to help you move your business and life forward with actionable tips and advice from her guest experts. To listen and subscribe, just find us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you consume your podcasts.
Welcome to Your Partner in Success Radio. I am your host, Denise Griffitts, and our topic today is all about email marketing. It's a big topic, it's an important topic, and we're going to be talking about daily email marketing secrets to boost engagement and sales with my returning guest, Mark Mawhinney. Now, Mark is a leading coaching expert, and he is the host of the popular podcast, Natural Born Coaches. I listen to it. And he returns to Your Partner in Success Radio to dive deeper into his proven strategies for building a massively successful coaching business. Now, since 2014, Mark has been helping coaches get more clients and grow their businesses with his daily podcast. Daily. I'm good. If I can do 3 a week, which I do, I don't know how you do it, Mark. But anyway, he has a daily podcast and thousands of consecutive daily emails, and they serve as powerful tools for authentic communication. Now, his unique approach focuses on helping coaches and others, not just coaches, understand how consistent, write this down, consistent, genuine engagement can transform an email list from a passive asset into a revenue generating powerhouse. And drawing from his extensive experience, he's here to share insights on connecting with subscribers, providing value, and building a thriving business without relying on expensive and sometimes annoying marketing tactics. Good morning, Mark. Welcome back. I was telling you in the green room just now, the last time we spoke, I took 4 pages of notes. I
Oh,
couldn't
good.
scribble them quick enough. It was fascinating.
That's awesome. And full disclosure, my podcast was daily for the first year back in 2014. It's gone to a weekly frequency for years, but I have been doing daily emails since April of 2016. So I'm up over 3,200 days of daily emails. But I just wanted to mention that the podcast is weekly now, but at one time it was daily.
And I think I knew that, but I was so caught up with the daily emails. So, and I'm glad you corrected that, but I do listen to you. I do
Thank you.
3 a week, and
Well,
come Friday, I'm like, today's Friday. So guess what? You're doing all the talking.
well, that's fine. I like to talk, so we're good.
Well, let's talk about email because that's as good as I am in so many areas. I'm humble too. Email marketing has never been a strength for me. And that's why I was taking so many notes because I know I need to get very serious about it and very good at it. So let's talk. Tell
Yeah.
people what they need to know about email marketing and why it's so important.
Well, okay, so I guess there's two things. I'm a big fan of email marketing, but obviously daily emails as well. So if someone's doing email marketing, but they're only emailing their list once a month or once in a blue moon, then you're not going to see the kind of results. So I'm a fan of email marketing because you know what it's like. Social media, you and I have chatted about this. You're dealing with issues like your reach being limited, sometimes kicked off. I think it was you, if I'm not mistaken, had some issues on one of your accounts, Facebook or LinkedIn or something. And just there's a lot of issues that can pop up from that. When you have an email list, you own that list. So you're not building your house on sand. You know, it's a solid foundation, and you're also being delivered right into their inbox every day. You're not fighting with thousands of social media posts on whichever news feed, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever. So that's why I'm a fan of email marketing. And I will say with daily, the elephant in the room, anyone who's listening to this, I know that you're thinking that sounds crazy. I would absolutely hate getting daily emails, or everyone will unsubscribe. They'll hate my guts. Trust me, every objection that you have, I had it as well. I promise. Before I was convinced to start daily emails, and I'll talk a little bit about that here today. So I just want to say that this sounds crazy. It takes a little bit of a leap of faith, but I wouldn't have done daily emails for over 3,200 days as of today consecutively if there wasn't a reason for it, if I wasn't getting an ROI with it. So hopefully that will I'll encourage people to hop on the daily email train, or at the very least email more often than they're currently doing. So a little bit about my backstory. I started coaching, as you mentioned, Denise, in 2014. And for the first 2 years of my coaching business, I did email, probably like many people listening here. I would email my list, sporadically, could have been once a week, maybe every 2 weeks. And they were boring as hell. They were designed to not offend. Oh, geez, you can't lose any subscribers, heaven forbid. And as a result, I was getting no results from email. Like, I don't know if I had any clients that I can think of, or I certainly could count them on one hand from my email efforts. So I got really frustrated by the spring of 2016, and I was ready to just kill off my email list and just be done with it and focus on what was working, my podcasting, social media, and so on. And I had a guest on my podcast who does daily emails to his list, and we were just chatting afterwards, and I was griping about, email marketing and stuff. And he said, well, why don't you try it just for like 30 days, Mark? What do you have to lose? And I thought, he's probably right. Other than some time, of course, to create the emails, I said, I'll give it 30 days and no expectations of results, no pressure on myself. We'll see what happens. And, I can't say that I made $1 million from emails in the first 30 days of doing daily ones, but I started to see some interesting results sprouting up. Like, for example, I was starting to get replies from my subscribers, which rarely happened before. And I started to get some sales trickle in as well. And it was enough that at the end of 30 days, I said, hey, I want to keep doing this. And that was April 12th of 2016. And here we are today, going forward. So any questions so far, Denise?
Observation. I don't know what it is about the new year, but every defunct or sleepy email person, all of a sudden they pop back up. And I'll tell you honestly, when I get an email from somebody or a newsletter that I haven't heard from, oh, in a year, I don't read it. I unsubscribe and I delete.
Yeah, you forgot about them. Well,
And
here's
I'm
a
a bit offended, to be honest. It's like I see what my importance to you is.
Yeah, it's tough because just speaking from the I see coaches and marketers from the other side who are very sheepish, like, oh, gee, Mark, I have a list, but I haven't emailed it in the last 6 months. What should I do? And I find the mistake that a lot of them make is
Apologize
they're
now. I'm so
overly
sorry.
Oh yeah, they're overly apologetic. So they're saying like, "Hey, you haven't heard from me in a while. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. And this happened, this happened, this happened. But I promise I'm going to do better." And it's almost like they ran over the subscriber's dog or something. And it's okay to make a little joke about it, but don't fall on your sword too much. It's not the end of the world that you didn't email. And be prepared for unsubscribes, like you mentioned, Denise. You usually unsubscribe if someone pops their head up or whatever, and that's okay. And that's not the end of the world either, but you shouldn't let that hold you back. If anyone who's listening to this is in that position where they haven't emailed their list in a long time, I'm just encouraging you to get back at it. And you can maybe make a joke or say you're going to hear from me more often, but don't be overly apologetic. You didn't do anything wrong. It's like I said, you didn't run over their dog. So that's something I think that has to be said.
I always call this the email whack-a-mole. It's like, oh no, you did not. I just don't have any patience for it. And I've gotten those. It's like, why are you apologizing? Just, tell me what's in it for me and I might stick around. That's if I haven't
Hmm.
already deleted it. But honestly, Mark, as a web developer, as a podcaster, when I'm looking at people, listening to people, they only want to know one thing, what's in it for them.
Yep.
Don't make them,
WIIFM. Yeah.
right. Don't grovel all over the place. We're not interested. What's in it for me?
Yeah. So if there's two parts of the equation, the daily email for that frequency, you want them to get used to seeing your email hitting their inbox, preferably the same time of the day. My emails go out the same time every single morning, and they get conditioned to it. So it gets to be such a regular occurrence for them that there was one day back, oh gee, I don't know, it was probably 3 years after I started doing daily emails consistently every single day, there was a hiccup with my email service provider, Aweber, where the email didn't go out that morning. And when I checked the dashboard, it was like this circle just going, like just showing whatever happened, there's a tech issue. And it did end up going out like later that day. All the emails went out. But in the meantime, I had a couple emails from subscribers asking me if I dropped them from my list. Or one of them thought I was doing a social experiment because she had been used to reading my emails the same time every morning. And I said, no, no social experiment, just Aweber's having a tech issue. I will give a shout out to Aweber. It's not the fanciest. There's fancier ESPs, but it's been very good to me in terms of deliverability and consistency with thousands of days of emails. That's the only time I remember there being an issue. So I will give a little shout out for Aweber. But what I did besides the daily part, which is great, doing daily emails, but you also have to make them entertaining or people wanting to read them. Like they can't be boring. There's an old saying. Now this was from Bill Crystal and it was referring to politics, but I think it can apply to business and to email marketing as well. And he said the only thing worse than being wrong in politics is being boring. So same thing here. You don't want to be boring. And when I started my daily email practice, which has gone on for many years, I also took the filter off and I just said, I'm going to have some fun with these. I'm not going to hold back and I'm not going to worry if anyone unsubscribes. So there's a very important tip I'll share with people, with everyone, is most email service providers have an option, and usually it's default, or at least with Aweber it is, where if you don't change it, you'll get an email every single time someone unsubscribes from the list. So I would get if I didn't change this setting, I'd get an email that Joe Smith has unsubscribed, and then there's a box where they could put feedback, and they could put some nasty stuff there, how keyboard warriors are on the internet. My recommendation is to take that option off the table. Do not get notices every time somebody unsubscribes because it's going to hurt your self-esteem, but it's also going to play head games with you because you're going to start thinking, let's say, even if you don't say anything, if I see Denise Griffitts has unsubscribed, I'm going to think, geez, what did I say in today's email that annoyed Denise? And I'm going to start overthinking, or maybe was it what I said yesterday? Did I say this? Did I say that? It's going to make it harder. So I recommend just totally disabling that whole thing. You don't want to be getting notices every time someone unsubscribes. And sometimes, it's just the nature of the beast. People are cleaning out their inboxes. They're not looking for the kind of help that you give anymore. Whatever. I unsubscribe from people's lists who I like often, and it's not because I don't like them. It's just usually I'm trying to lessen the noise and make sure that I'm not distracting myself. So a few important tips there in the early stages. Any questions, Denise, or so far so good?
I have an observation though, because,
Sure.
and this happens, and I hate to say it with my guests, because they have my personal email address, which is not out there in the wild deliberately. And somebody on their team, I don't think it's them, I know they know better, but somebody on their team will automatically add me to their now email list.
Ugh, yeah,
I
that's
don't
that.
like that. But because they're my guest and I recognize who they are, I do go ahead, I'll unsubscribe. And it'll say, in the comments area, I'll say, listen, I didn't give permission for this, but when I do subscribe, I use what I call my fake email address. It's a Yahoo account.
Hmm.
And I don't give my email address out because of things like this. They still get it anyway. And I do. If I want to hear from you, I will go over to my Yahoo account and I'll subscribe over there. Thank you. And they, oh, sorry, Denise, we didn't know. But
Yeah.
I'm not dumping on my guests and hurting their feelings by saying, well, you were on my show a week ago, but I don't like you no more. I mean, I'm just not going to do it that way. So there are times when it does make sense to go in there and say, sorry, this is unsolicited, but I will or have subscribed elsewhere.
Yeah, that's a big faux pas. So anyone
Oh,
listening,
yeah. Yeah.
please don't do that. And the other pet peeve I have, which has happened to me quite a bit in the last year, is there's people I'm connected with on social media that will often put up what I call a hand raiser post. So it might be the friend will put up a post and say, "Hey, I just created a guide on how to get, I don't know, 10 new clients this month using blah, blah, blah," something like that, a teaser. Comment if you want it below. And, I have raised my hand sometimes because, oh, that sounds interesting or whatever. What they should be doing in that case is sending it by Facebook Messenger. "Hey, Mark, here's a report you asked for. Let me know if you have any questions. I hope it helps." What some of them have done, which I think this falls in the same camp as you just mentioned with people adding your email without you requesting it, is they've added me to their email list after I raised my hands on social media, which wasn't part of the deal. And when you do something like that at the very beginning, you're breaking trust before you even start a relationship with your email subscribers. So there's certain things you don't want to do. I mean, that's obvious. Don't dump people on your email list without their permission. Another one, there's little tricks that email marketers use, which I hate, like with subject lines, for example. They'll put often something like RE, so regarding what we talked about yesterday, or something like that. They'll make it sound like it's a personal email between you
Yeah.
two.
That's
Yeah.
insta block. For me, that
Yeah,
I know what you're
it's
doing, and
so
that is
tacky. Yeah.
insta block.
Yeah, like, I'm all for having compelling subject lines to bump up the open rates, but not using tricks like that because, again, it lowers the trust that your subscribers have with you. So, the way that you want to get people on your list is, should be common sense. It's very open and upfront. I mean, the best way I think is to offer something of value, a report or some sort of resource, could be videos, whatever, in exchange for their email address. But you can't do what used to happen in I say the old days of the internet, 10, 15 years ago. You could have a sales page with just or your website with a box that says sign up for my newsletter. That's not going to cut it nowadays because people are like, well, I already get enough emails. What's in it for me? You want to give them a really good resource that compels them to trade their email address for that whatever resource it is. And I'm very clear with my stuff when people are opting in. I put it right out there that, hey, these are daily emails. I put it in my autoresponder as well. If you're not cool with that and you want to unsubscribe, that's okay. But I do email my list daily, which I think is important to put out there. So put some thought into a good resource and not garbage. Sometimes people do opt-ins and it takes them 20 minutes and they just whip up something on a Word document or something. Now, you don't have to write a 300-page ebook, but you should put a little bit of thought into it and say, what would I want to get if I was on the other side of the screen, and what would compel me to give my email address in exchange for this resource?
I like to get checklists. I love checklists.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you give me a good checklist. Ooh, I can use that. Yeah, give us something that's logical and makes sense.
Exactly. So one of the big questions I get asked by people when I'm talking about daily emails is, well, how do you write the emails, Mark? What does it look like? How do you come up with ideas? My emails, they're not 1,000-word type War and Peace big novels, and they don't have to be. Most of my emails are probably 100 to 200 words, I would think, maybe a little more, and a couple paragraphs. My main goal is I want to give an aha or something, get some thinking, or something of value, something that's rewarding them for taking 30 seconds out of their day to read the email. And then I transition into a call to action in every single email. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. I think it's really important that you're making offers and that you're not falling into the trap of, quote, nurturing, which a lot of email gurus are out there preaching, which I disagree with. But I write my emails. I don't sit down the morning of with a blank screen and then, okay, what am I going to write today? Because that's putting a lot of pressure on my shoulders. I batch write my emails, so I could sit down in a couple hour span and I might crank out 7 emails for next week, and then I schedule them in there. And at any given time, I like to be really 2 weeks ahead, ideally. Sometimes I'm a month ahead, which is great because life can get in the way, and then that's going to eat into those scheduled ones. If something happens that is a current event that I want to put into my emails, something just happens, there's a, let's say, a zombie apocalypse today, and I want to talk about it tomorrow, I would just unschedule tomorrow's email and write the new one, just push tomorrow's back to, a day after or whatever. But you'd never want to put that kind of pressure on yourself to sit down and have to write every single morning because your kids might be sick, or you got to take your parents to the hospital unexpectedly or whatever. You could be sick and life's going to get in the way. So you want to make sure that you have a nice number. Same thing goes with podcasts. You know this, Denise, from doing three per week. You're never probably recording the podcast a day of. I'm guessing you've got some in the can.
Actually, I do all of my pre-work. I get my notes done, I get my script done. I do work with a script. If you're not, you're making a mistake. I'm telling you, it's a whole nother topic. I don't, when I say a script, I know what I'm going to say. I've got my talking points, I've got your talking points, and I can scan through it and it keeps me honest. It keeps me on track. But all of that work is done, even putting it into my podcast platform is all done. All I have to do, because this has been recorded and it will be out today, all I have to do is slightly edit what we've been talking about at the very beginning, my virtual green room, and put it up. I'm done. So I
Mm,
call that racking and stacking. I don't
yeah,
want to have to sit in here and go, "Ugh, what's next?" But yeah,
exactly.
I've got them done for weeks in advance because
Oh, great.
like right now I'm booked through May, believe it or not.
Well, no, and that's a good way. It's a lot less stressful for sure. So
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, go ahead. Oh, so the way that I write my emails, like I mentioned, I give like some aha or something I want them to know. And when I say there's a call to action, I transition. It's not like an arm twisting, big long type thing, It's I tell them what I want to tell them, and then it might be something like, by the way, I go over this in greater detail in my ABC program. Here's a link to check it out. Just something like that. There's email marketing, the quote gurus who are advising so I think giving some bad advice. So for example, one that I heard was she was told by this email guru that when you get someone on your email list for the first 50 days, you do not sell to them. You take 50 days, that's 50, to nurture the relationship. You tell them about your backstory and you just, I know there's a whole soap opera sequence that you see out there and all this stuff. And then after 50 days, you can start, putting offers out there. I think that's awful advice. The analogy that I heard before is if you had a splitting headache and you went into your local pharmacy to get some relief for that headache, and the pharmacist said, well, no, I'm not going to sell you any medication for it, but here's a brochure to learn more about the history of headaches or something, you'd be pretty annoyed and you'd probably go to another pharmacy. People are on your list because they need help with something. And if you're not selling to them, you're doing them a disservice. And it doesn't mean that the home shopping network salesy with all these capitalized words and exclamation points and false urgency and all this stuff. But you really should be making offers. I always say that you have to sell to help. And the way that I generally do it, it sometimes may deviate a little, but I usually split my month into the weeks and then I'll promote something a week at a time. So I'm not switching from offer A on Monday, offer B on Tuesday, offer C on Wednesday, back to offer A on Thursday, then offer B, and so on. I'll take the whole week to talk about offer A. And then the next week, maybe I'm talking about offer B to mix it up. I'm doing a mix. I'm promoting my stuff some of those weeks. And then other times I do a lot of joint ventures with partners. So I'll be promoting a JV partner for the whole week. But at least then there's consistency in a runway. You don't want to be bouncing around from different offers every single day. When I mention call to actions too, while it usually is an offer for something that, a program, product, something that I'm selling, sometimes my call to action is directing them to a podcast interview. So my show, Natural Born Coaches, is released every Monday morning. Often on Mondays, my email is talking about that week's episode, which just came out, and the link is directing them over to give it a listen. So doesn't mean that always has to be a program, an offer that you're selling, but at least a call to action, inviting them to take the next step.
Hearing from you, Mark, and I'm going back because you said something very important, that 50 days. I agree with you. That is nonsense. People are going to buy from those that they know, like, and trust. And as my friend Bengay the Third says, and with whom they feel comfortable. You can make those connections pretty quickly.
Mm,
50 days is nonsense.
I agree. It's yeah, a lot of bad advice out there, but that's the internet for you, I guess. And it's probably people who aren't selling much from their email list. The way I view with daily emails, it's a self-purging list. So I don't have to clean my list often because it's chasing people away who aren't resonating with me or my message. Some people aren't cool with it. They don't want to get an email every day, and that's fine. They can unsubscribe. I would rather have a list of, say, 5,000 people that you're emailing daily, sending good stuff, building that relationship very strong where it's daily, 5,000 person lists or subscribers versus a 20,000 subscriber list that you hardly talk to, or you're just sending them some boring stuff once every couple weeks. I guarantee if we were split testing it, the list of the 5,000 with daily emails would outperform, bring in more revenue than the 20,000 list that's hardly ever get receiving any emails from you. So size doesn't matter. Ideally, you've got quality, quantity as well. It's better to have a bigger list. You have greater chance of selling as long as the quality is there and you're building that relationship with people as well. Some places I get ideas for my emails. I write about things going on in my life, things that are happening with clients, keeping confidentiality in mind, of course. But sometimes a client gets an interesting result or an interesting situation that I think others can learn from. Sometimes I've actually asked a client, hey, look, I'd love to mention this in my email to my list. Do you mind if I do? And I can't recall a client ever saying, no, Mark, please don't mention it. So you just use your judgment there. What else? I get ideas from YouTube videos, Netflix, like movies I'm watching, blogs I read, books are very big. I'm the type of person when I read a book, I have a highlighter. So I'm highlighting the stuff that stands out to me. I'm writing notes in the margins. I mark my books up. So if I'm ever stuck for an idea for my emails, I just go to my bookshelf, I pull a book down, I flip through, I look at some of those highlighted passages, and that gets the creative juices flowing. Nowadays, of course, with AI being a big thing, you get people using AI. I don't use AI for content creation. I have used it before, maybe to get creative juices flowing, where I'll ask it something. But I think that's bad advice as well for these people saying that you can use AI to crank out a year's worth of emails in 10 minutes or whatever. I just think there's a lot of garbage content out there with AI. So I don't recommend using AI or having other people write your emails as well. Like my emails are very much in my voice. I've had people who know me in quote real life who said, Mark, your emails sound exactly like how you talk. And I'm like, well, of course, how else would they sell? But I have kind of a weird, dry sense of humor. I'll make jokes. I can have a bit of a potty mouth. I'm not dropping F bombs in my emails, but I might be a little salty at times with language like crap or BS, which I can't believe that I did. I have had a few subscribers reach out and say, Mark, I like your emails, but you said crap in the one you sent yesterday. So can you please clean it up? It's not on the same energetic level as me. And I'm like, look, I write like I talk. And if you want to leave, that's fine. It's your choice, but I'm not going to change how I'm writing. Well, just like I wouldn't change how I'm talking. So just, I know it sounds silly to say it, but write like you talk, and authenticity is a buzzword nowadays, but I do think it's important. People want to hear that instead of the boring marketing speak. Or I also work with a lot of clients coming from corporate, and they're used to sending these sanitized emails out to their teams in a corporate setting, and they find it really tough to open up and get out of that corporate speak, if that's a word. And I recommend getting away from that.
And you're talking about AI, and I'm scribbling again. I do use AI, but like you, I don't use it for content. I will go in there and for one of my social clients, and I'll say, give me 10 different topics that we can talk about in this or this or this. And it's like, oh, that works. Oh, that one's not so good. And then I take it and I write it in their
Hmm.
voice, but it gives me ideas.
Yeah.
And I love Perplexity chat, not so much. I think they get a little hysterical every now and then, but
Hmm.
I love Perplexity AI because I can take whatever I wrote, and I'm like you, I write the same way I speak. And I'll say crap on the radio, by the way. So there you have it. I've said it. But I will take it and go and I'll read it. And I read anything I've written out loud. Just that way I can pick where, what the heck did I just say there? And I'll take that and say, okay, this is what I wrote. Can you tidy this up? Oh, that's good. But it was still in my own voice.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what the good thing about daily emails is if you start today, you're actually creating content down the road for years. And what I mean by that is sometimes I will repackage old emails and let's say from 2017, 2018, because my topics are for the most part evergreen. You know, stuff changes all the time in the coaching world, but a lot of what I teach are principles that are the same today as they were back years ago. So I'll take an email from 2017 and I'll use this now. And I don't think I've ever had a subscriber say, "Hey, Mark, you sent this email back on July 14th of 2017. What's going on?" That's another worry that people had. I was speaking at an event in San Diego. This was actually, yeah, 2017 it would have been. And oh, not Kiyosaki. It's gonna uh, the guy with Canva. Uh, boys, it's gonna bug me. Anyways, not Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Poor Dad guy, but anyway, Guy Kawasaki was speaking at this event. So when I was done my talk, I went in to listen to what he was saying, and he told a story that stuck with me now for 8 years after. He was talking about his Facebook fan page, and at the time, I think he had about 500,000 followers or fans on that fan page. And he did an experiment one day where he said, I wonder what would happen if I post the exact same post, word for word, in the morning and then later in the day on the fan page. And I wonder how many complaints I'll get out of 500,000 people or whatever. Do you want to take a guess, Denise, how many complaints he got that day?
People are not reading it all day. I'm guessing that most people didn't notice it.
Yeah, if you had to say a number out of 500,000 who actually messaged him, what number would you comes to mind?
2.
Ding, 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 you win. That's the exact number.
Really? I picked
You're
that out of the
psychic.
ether. Yeah. I was
I've
being
asked that.
sardonic.
I've told that story a bunch of times, and I always ask that question. You're the first person that's actually guessed it right. I've heard, geez, I've heard 10 before, five sometimes, but usually people are guessing like, oh, gee, out of 500,000 must have been what, like 100, or was it like a couple hundred? And I guess the point that Guy Kawasaki was making was, people are busy with their lives. They're not sitting here parsing every single word you write or worrying about it. Me personally, if I followed an account like that and I saw the exact same post, I wouldn't think to complain about it. I would probably think, oh, maybe the team messed up and they just posted the same thing. So nobody's going to complain if you repackage an email that you used years ago, or even if one used a few months ago. I wouldn't use the same one that I wrote a week earlier, but I might go back 6 months or so and then just use it again. And I may have to tweak the call to action or something at the end, but for the most part, I can just copy and paste. The other thing that helps with this whole process of daily emails is I'm then putting that email all over the place in like 8, 10 different places. So the daily email obviously goes out to my email list. It's a blog post on my blog at naturalborncoaches.com. It goes to three places in Facebook: my personal, my fan page, and then the Coaching Jungle, which is my Facebook group. It goes to LinkedIn, it goes to Twitter or X. So it goes all over the place. An email that I can now write in, well, I don't know, it might take me 15 minutes to write an email. But when I started, it probably took me an hour. It's like going to the gym, you build up your email writing muscles. But an email that takes me 15 minutes to write then becomes content all over the internet. And I like doing that because people are busy, they're distracted, their attention's pulled in every which direction. I want to make sure if they miss the email that they're seeing it somewhere, whether it be social media, wherever. And often I will ask someone when they hire me or when we start doing business, hey, how did you find out about this? Because it's my way of doing research to hear what's working. And they'll often say to me, like, well, I think I read an email about it, Mark, but then I also noticed that you mentioned it in the Coaching Jungle group. And I think I saw you put a tweet out about it too, didn't you? You know, so they don't know exactly where they first found out about it, but that doesn't matter. Like they're in my world and they're now, buying or taking the next step, which is great. So that's one way to look at it. If you start doing daily emails now, you're going to be able to squeeze a lot of juice out of that orange.
Facebook a couple of times, and I want to ask you about your group. But it was Facebook who just eliminated me for no reason. I had never had any trouble. I was never put in jail. I was never even hand smacked, but I disappeared. Now,
Wow.
oddly, I know, and getting them to fix it, don't bother.
Yeah,
Just
good
don't bother.
luck.
It's
Yeah.
not worth the trouble, honestly. So I finally just said, "Oh, to heck with it." My two business pages are still there. I had a very active Facebook group about feline office assistants, still there. It's really weird. I can still have access to Instagram. So who knows? Maybe a bot didn't like me for some reason. But what I do regret, Mark, is that I had 19 years, I think, tons of content. And I would go
Yeah.
back to, 10 years ago, oh, this was fun and talk about it again. That's all gone.
Yeah, that
And
sucks. But
yeah,
I'm glad that you not glad that that happened to you, obviously, but I'm glad that you mentioned it because it's a reminder for people that you really should every so often back up your email list. You can also
yeah,
back up your Facebook, right?
right. Which I hadn't done in a long time. So
Yeah.
it's
And
just
I haven't either.
gone.
I did a backup on Facebook maybe a year ago, so you've motivated me to do that later today.
Go do
Um,
that.
yeah, so a little tip I will say, speaking of Facebook and the 19 years of content and stuff you have, this if I'm ever stuck for ideas, if you're using Facebook, of course, if you go to Facebook memories, so if you go to facebook.com/on this day, it'll show you what you posted on this date 1 year ago, this date 2 years ago, this date 3 years ago, and so on. So I'll often go back and take a Facebook memory post that I did years ago, and I'll use it now as well. So you want to take everything that's at your disposal there to help with the content for sure.
Now, the Coaching Jungle, your Facebook group has how many? 26,000 members?
We're up to 27,000 now. Yeah.
Ooh, good for you. So, and I'm guessing from listening to you that a big part of that growth is from your daily email marketing.
Yes. So my email list grows my Facebook group, and actually my Facebook group grows my email list too. So I'll explain that. And how the email list grows a Facebook group is in the very first email that a new subscriber gets from me, the email where I'm giving them the resource that they requested for opting in. I have a PS in there, kind of by the way, I have a Facebook group called the Coaching Jungle. There's 27,000 coaches in there, blah, blah, blah. Love for you to check it out. Here's the link, which gets us a lot of new members in the jungle. But then in the jungle, when people request to join the Facebook group, one of the membership questions is, would you like free daily email advice from Mark to help you grow your coaching business? If so, leave your best email because you want their best email, ideally, in a perfect world. And so a lot of people joining the group will leave their email to get my daily email. So I'm growing my list that way. It's an ecosystem that's helping each other. And the other thing that really helps grow the group and also emails too, but it's going on podcasts like this. Every podcast I'm on, I don't talk the whole time about the Facebook group because I'm there to give value, not to promote the group. But I will mention, hey, go check out thecoachingjungle.com because that takes you to the group, thecoachingjungle.com. And I notice on days when interviews get released, because we have definitely an uptick in requests from people joining the group. So when this comes out, I'll probably know because I just slipped in the coachingjungle.com that some of Denise's listeners will be coming over. So you just, when it comes to email, Facebook groups, everything, you want to be talking it up often and use every opportunity to get the word out about it.
And you're talking about evergreen, and that is something that is so important. In fact, on LinkedIn, because I've been forced to go spend more time at LinkedIn, which I'm kind of enjoying now. I didn't for the longest kind of time, and Facebook was friendlier. But, now that I'm spending a lot more quality time on LinkedIn, I thought, oh, I need to, get back into my thousands and thousands of, emails and newsletters that I get and my podcast. And I posted one that I think was 3 or 4 years old. And the
Mm,
response that I got, because it's evergreen, I try to keep them evergreen. But can't always do it, but most
right.
of the time. And the response was, Denise, I still get people commenting on the, it was a while back, but I still get people commenting on this. That's what you want to hear.
Yeah, and train of thought, but this goes to show how interesting things and good things can happen from activities that you're doing, whether it be emails,
Right.
podcast interviews, whatever. I was on a podcast years ago that I almost didn't go on because the show was designed for freelancers, and I'm not a freelancer. And the guy invited me on. I said, "Well, I'm not a freelancer." I said, "I've hired freelancers," and he goes, "Oh, that's great," or whatever. So I ended up going on the show, didn't think anything of it. And this was probably like 6 months after it came out. I got a new client. I asked the question, like I mentioned, "Hey, how did you hear about me?" And he said, "Oh, I heard you on this podcast. It was for freelancers." Would have never expected to get a coaching client from because I only deal with coaches. That's my niche. And I don't work with any other entrepreneurs. I refer them off. So you just never know what comes out of left field when you're out there. You're creating a lot of content, you're doing interviews, stuff like that. You're, what's that old saying about the harder I work, the luckier I get? I really believe in that.
And I wanted to touch on consistency because you and I have talked a lot about this. But when I first started my podcast, and this is when I learned that if I say I'm going to show up at, it used to be 10 o'clock on Friday. Now I do Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Not my fault. I blame other people for this, but
Mhm.
it's interesting. But years ago, many, many years ago, I had a guest and he was my fan. I didn't know, and he came on my show. He was the sweetest guy. He passed away about 10 years ago. And I didn't show up because I didn't have a guest. And I wasn't really serious about my podcast. I didn't have a system. I didn't have a goal. I was just putting it out every
Mhm.
Friday as best as I could. Don't do it the way I did it. Just saying that. Just don't have a plan. But I get this email, kind of a panicked email. Denise, are you okay? Your show's, and he was almost stuttering. He was so worried.
Mhm.
And I went, hang on a second. You mean I have people looking for me at 10 o'clock each Friday? The answer was yes, I did, and I
A
do.
good sign.
Yeah. So consistency, whether it's email marketing, whether it's podcasting, if you say you're going to show up daily or on Fridays or whenever, show up.
Yeah. And I know it can sound overwhelming if someone hasn't been sending emails or not sending them often to suddenly hear, "Oh, who's this Mark guy from Canada saying, send daily emails." That would be great if I can convince some of you to send emails daily, but even if it's increasing your frequency. So I've worked with clients before that have said, "Mark, I've been sending out one email a week and, I just can't get the daily. Like I could do 3 times a week or whatever." And I said, "Well, hey, that's great. That's better than once a week. That's an improvement." But I will say daily is daily. So I was speaking with someone once. I was on her podcast or she was on mine. And she said, "Mark, you've convinced me. I'm going to start daily emails." So I was speaking with her, down the road a little bit. And I said, "Hey, how'd it go with daily emails? Did you start doing that?" And she said, "Yep, yeah, I've been doing daily emails." I said, "Oh, geez, great," or whatever. And then she said, "Well, I do Monday to Friday. I take the weekends off." And I said, "Well, I said, not to be that guy, but that's not daily. 5 out of 7 days. I don't have my calculator. I think it's like 73% or so. So it's almost like, well, we'll use an analogy where we're close to Super Bowl. It's like you get to the 5 yard line, but you don't run it across into the end zone. You're not going to get a touchdown. So the way I've always viewed it, if you're going to be getting that close, writing 5 emails a week, hey, why not write seven? Every time you write an email, it's almost like buying a lottery ticket, right? And you have better odds of being paid by email, of course. And that's the way I view it is if I'm sending out, well, I say 365 a year. I'm actually sending out over probably 400 and some because I have some multi days where I send multiple emails. If I'm sending out 400, 500 emails a year and you're only sending out 10, 15 emails a year, I have a better chance of getting the return, like ROI from it, just because I've bought more lottery tickets, so to speak. You just never know who's reading those emails.
I mentioned that I have my little fake email. And by the way, when I show up on your list, I'm not even a female, I'm a dude. Like you just don't even need to know who I am. But here's the thing, and I keep most of them, but you mentioned, the weekend. That's when I batch them. That's when I go read the emails, or I unsubscribe, or I take notes and I get ideas. I actually have a system on Sunday morning where I spend a couple of hours each week in Yahoo and I go through every one of those
Yeah,
emails. There's a lot of information in there that, get your brain working. Oh, that's a good idea. Or what the heck? I'll take a break from this one for now. But I think you'll find, or she might find, that weekends might be when people like me are going, hey, I'm here. What you got?
exactly. Yeah. And that's why I even think with podcasts, sometimes I've had people with podcasts who've released, you would think the weekend, oh, gee, that's probably not the best day to do it. But there's people like you that are catching up on podcasts, on the weekend. And I know someone who, with his email list, he emails, when was it? Like, I used to be on his list years ago. I think he was emailing at like close to midnight. It was like really late at night. And I asked him about it because I've had him on my show. And he said the reason he does it is if he does it in the morning, everyone's inbox is getting flooded. They're getting their workday started. They're racing to get the kids off to school, whatever. He said at night, if it's 10 o'clock at night or so, they've settled down. They're, probably on their phone, in bed or watching TV, multitasking. And he said that their inboxes are less busy at that time. So you just have to go with what works for you. But I do recommend picking the same time and day of every day to do it. So right now, mine go at it's 7:05 a.m. Eastern time, and there's no logic for it where I have some sort of stats that's the most profitable time. It's just I kind of went with that time. Interestingly, what's happened now, people in my world who have email lists are sending at the exact same time as me because I'm on their list. So I think they think, oh, gee, Mark's sending at 7:05 Eastern. He must know something.
I'm going to do what he does. I
Yeah.
was looking at my stats. I had to move from one platform that I had been with for, almost 17 years and moved to a new platform, which was a pain in the fanny, but I'm really glad I did it. And my new stats tell me that people listen to my podcast, guess when? 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh,
I don't know why. I don't even want to know why. Just that they're listening, that's all I care about. But 3 o'clock in the morning, are you joking? But I'm
night owls.
thinking, yeah. Well, and of course I'm heard all over the globe. So, maybe it's just, they're just putting everything in one slot. But 3 o'clock now I'm awake at 3 in the morning, but I didn't think anybody
Could be
else was.
A lot of Australians, if it's
Yeah. Yeah.
afternoon for Australia. I don't
Yeah,
know.
you never know. So I think the point that you and I are both making is get it out there because people will find you when they're ready to hear what you have to say.
Agreed. Yeah, so I mean that's there's so much I could talk about. I could talk all day about daily emails, but I think the main thing I want to stress is I know it sounds crazy because I thought it sounded crazy too when it was first proposed to me. I would give the same challenge that the person challenged me with and is give it 30 days of daily emails, no expectations. You're not worried about making $1 million. Don't worry about open rates. Don't worry about all that stuff. Just do 30 days. And if you don't have a list yet, or if you have a very small list, because I have talked to people before, they're like, well, Mark, I want to wait till my list is bigger before I do daily, because right now I only have 40 people on my list. There's just not enough. And I said, well, now's the best time to do it because you're in a way getting into this rhythm and you're practicing your writing. And maybe it's not going to be as good as probably won't be as good as it will be in 5 years' time, but less people are seeing it now versus when your email list is thousands of people. So it's great practice, gets you building that content creation muscle. And I'll give a few words of warning. When you first start, it could take an hour to write an email, but once you've been doing it for long enough, you're going to be able to hammer them out really quickly. And if you're have a current list that's not used to hearing from you every day, expect a higher number of unsubscribes in those early days. And you're going to be a little freaked out because I've had clients before. Mark, I started doing daily emails this week and I'm getting 3 times the number of unsubscribes than I normally get. And I say, look, you just have to hold the line here. That's going to happen just because it's a new thing. And then it'll settle down into something that's more reasonable. So don't let that scare you off.
Cleaning, chances are they weren't really paying attention anyway. I wanted to ask you, I read this somewhere, and I don't know if it's true or not. I think that MailChimp found that daily emails have the lowest unsubscribe rates.
Sorry, you said MailChimp?
Yeah, MailChimp.
Yeah, they probably do. I mean, I would think so.
I don't know why. Why MailChimp? Why not anybody else? Like you, I've been with
Oh,
AWeber before.
I thought it was a study by MailChimp saying that daily emails had the lowest number of unsubscribes, but you mean
Yeah,
Mail,
yeah.
or do you
MailChimp,
mean
yeah.
MailChimp as a provider, their emails have the lowest number of unsubscribes? Is that what you mean?
I read it somewhere and I don't
Yeah.
remember if it
Oh.
was a study or if it was just a throwaway from MailChimp, but I wanted to know if you knew anything about that.
I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of MailChimp.
Me either. I'm like you, I like AWeber. I was with
I
them for
like
years.
Aweber is very basic, and I've had people before, like, well, not so much now, but back in the day, Infusionsoft was a big one that, oh, you gotta get Infusionsoft, got all these bells and whistles, they'll do this, they'll do that. And I always said, like, Aweber is very basic, but if I'm going to the store down the street that's, 100 feet away, I'll take a bicycle, I guess, instead of I don't need a rocket ship or a Ferrari, although it would be nice to have a Ferrari, so never mind. But it's overkill with Infusionsoft.
Oh yeah.
Um, and this actually, you remind me of a very important point that I want to make is whichever I say ESP, email service provider, whichever email platform you're choosing, you want to make sure that you're comfortable with it. So I've had people try to get me to switch to different ones, like, oh, Mark, you should use this one, you should use this one. And I've checked out different ones and I wasn't feeling them. Like I helped a client who was getting into daily emails and we did a screen share because she had a few questions about MailChimp, which I don't use. But I said, hey, I'll have a look. We'll do a screen share on our call. And just for me personally, I didn't like the layout or whatever. Now, some people may like it, and I hear people arguing for whichever one they use. But if you don't like your email platform, you're not going to feel like going in there and writing an email. If it's like some of them are really wonky, that I'm not feeling them. I like Aweber because it's home for me. I've used it for over a decade now, and I know it. I like it. There's no friction whatsoever. So I'm not saying I'll never change. Maybe there'll be this real kick-ass email service provider that comes out that I'm going to fall in love with, but I can't see that happening, or at least not right now. So you don't need a big, fancy, expensive one. Aweber, you can get started probably what, $20 a month. I think MailChimp, I don't know if they still have it. They used to have it where the first 1,000 subscribers were free. Maybe they're charging a bit now. I don't know. But you don't need something that's $500 a month.
Got to the point years ago with they said, "Oh, we're going to be using Infusionsoft. Good luck. I won't work with
Yeah,
you on
there's a
it. You're
reason
going to
why
have
they
to
call
hire
it,
a keep
what
or
do they
something
call
else."
it? Confusionsoft?
Oh
Was it?
yeah, it was horrible. And going back to AWeber, they have longevity. Listen, I've been an affiliate for them for years because I used them for a long time. And
Yes.
to this day, I still get, they're not huge affiliate, checks, but I get them. Those people they just stick. Once they're in there, they don't go away.
Well, I should mention, and you would know, Denise, that the email, like the Gmails and stuff, Hotmails, etc., back last, I think about a year ago, it was last February, made some changes, which is very important and it's very techy. It's above my pay grade tech wise. I hired someone and he didn't charge me much money, but we made a few changes and it shows that your email is trusted and it has a better chance of landing in the primary tab of the person's email inbox as opposed to promotions or the dreaded spam. So I would say if anybody wants to be connected with that guy that I have, Denise, they can, if they reach out to you or you let me know, I can connect you. but he really didn't charge me much. And I have people telling me, "Hey, Mark, how are your emails landing in my primary?" Most of the time, I'm sure sometimes other place with other people they may not be, but I have a much better deliverability. And my open rate for the size of the list I have is always hovering around 25%, which is pretty good when you look at the averages that are out there.
Yeah, shoot me a note, shoot me an email with that information,
Will
and I'll
do.
make sure that it's available if anybody needs it. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned earlier that you can leverage personal stories. Can you share an example of how you've leveraged I can't talk, a personal story in an email to make it more relatable and authentic? And honestly, and that goes back to you speaking in your voice. I do the
Hmm.
same thing. Authenticity is a big word right now, and I think so many of us are tired. Look, I'm a techie person. I'm a nerd in stilettos. I can tech you to death, but I've
Yeah.
had to train myself years ago to not speak my techie language. It just doesn't work. Nobody
Well,
understands. So what did she just say?
I'll, I'll give a story from almost 2 years ago. It was March of 2023, and I remember that day very vividly. It was a Saturday because that was the day my father passed away. So this is an
Sorry.
example of, thank you, of life coming, hitting you sometimes when you least expect it. Now, Dad would have been just about 74 years old, so he wasn't, a spring chicken, but it wasn't the call I was expecting to get on a Saturday morning. So what I did in that case, of course, I had an email scheduled that day. I had emails probably for a couple weeks out from there. I did not feel right sending an email that day with the day my father passed away with a call to action trying to sell something. It just didn't sit right with me. And I'm like, well, geez, I also didn't want to lose my streak because people were used to hearing from me. And for me, it's very important to continue the daily email thing. Obviously, the death of a loved one trumps all this business stuff. But I thought, what am I going to do? And what I did was I unscheduled the one that was set to go out that day. And I sent one out later that day to my list. And I was very honest that, hey, my father passed away today. This is a short one. And I was basically just reminding them to cherish their loved ones, and enjoy their time. And I said, if you get anything from this email, call or visit your parents if they're still alive. If they're not near you, call them and make some time for them today. And that one was probably the most replies I've ever gotten from an email, with people expressing condolences, which I appreciated. I knew some of them, but I didn't know a lot of them. But then also I had other people reach out and say, you know what, Mark, I feel guilty. I haven't talked to my parents in a while. I've just been so busy. And because of your email, I'm going to reach out to mom and dad today because of it. So there's an example of something happening in real life, a story, I guess, that was happening that day, literally, that did a lot of good. And that was, a hard email to write, a hard day, of course, with dad passing, but I made me feel a little bit better knowing that some good came from it.
Sure. And I'm sorry to hear about your dad. And
Yeah,
it
thank
sounds
you.
like it was unexpected, and that's even worse.
He was in a nursing home. So again, he wasn't a spring chicken, but there was no health. Like, sometimes someone's in hospice or palliative care or something like that, and then you're kind of expecting it. This one was just, yeah, a little out of the blue. So there shows the importance. It doesn't have to be the death of a loved one, like illnesses, car accidents, etc. If you don't batch write your emails, life is going to get in the way and it's going to break your streak. It's inevitable that something's going to happen. So, peace of mind wise, I love having at least a couple weeks of emails in the can.
And to what we've been talking about, consistency. You didn't want to break your daily, even if it wasn't terrific news and you were sharing something intensely personal, you still did it. And I think for me, that's the moral of the story right there.
Yeah. Actually, Denise, I'll give a quick tip if anyone's stuck. I've mentioned some ideas to get content, if you have writer's block, but here's one that I use sometime if my brain's not firing on all cylinders, like, geez, what am I going to write for whatever day? What I like to do is type the date of that email's going out into Wikipedia or Google it. And I'm looking for important events that happened that day, important births, and important deaths. And of those three things, there's usually something that I can pull from there and then riff on it, where that'll get it started, and then I'll turn it into whatever point I wanted to make or whatever lesson, and then of course the call to action. So there's a little tip you could use, days like dates. The other one you could use are holidays. You know, if it's getting close to Halloween, maybe you send an email out about the 10 biggest fears of your clients or potential customers, you know, things they worry about. Something maybe around the holidays, you could do I don't even know what you would do just off the top of my head. Something, oh, well, good example, this past holidays, the second half of December, of late 2024, I decided to do a promotion for Coaching Jungle VIP perk that I have a number of members of the group that are in there. And I had a holiday promotion and I weaved in some holiday themed messages in there as well, emails. So you can have some fun with it.
My mute button. Sorry about that. I like what you just said because one of the rare newsletters that I allow to come to me personally is about history. I'm fascinated with history. And sometimes I'll go, that happened. Ooh. And all of a sudden I've got something to chat about. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's reference books I have, like like the bathroom reader types that
You're
have like
right.
on
Right.
this day. So you could definitely have some fun with those. Q&A, that's another one. If there's some frequently asked questions that are constantly popping up, you can do your FAQs, I guess, for the emails and answer those questions for everyone else too. What's going to happen once you get into the habit of writing daily emails? People say to me, how do you come up with enough ideas? My issue is I have too many ideas and I have to strike some or put them in my
Yeah.
drafts folder of Aweber.
I do the same thing. Not for emails, but for my podcast and I'm writing a book about podcasting and marketing. So I'm constantly because like you, I mean you're batching, I call it rack and stack. It's a friend of mine does that and I like that. I can remember that. So I'm almost always a week or two. I like to be 2 weeks ahead of everything because I don't want to come in here. I may be needing to build a website that day. I may be working with mentoring a new podcast student. I can't sit here and go, now what am I going to do? It has to be out there in front of me. And because of that, my creativity almost never just says, I'm taking a break. I'm going to be outside. Your creativity just goes along with you because you've relieved a lot of that stress.
Yeah, there's a great book on creativity this remind me of because I'm reading it now and I'm trying to remember the name. It's Rick Rubin wrote it, Rubin. He's like a music producer and stuff. And I think it's like on being creative or something like that. Creative or creativity's in the title, but people can Google it. Rick Rubin, and that's an excellent book. And it talks about like one of the concepts I took from it is taking the pressure off yourself. We put too much pressure when we're creating. And he says that you almost take the approach that I don't care what happens with this. I'm creating just to create. And often you end up creating something better that way. But when you put too much pressure on yourself, to tie it into daily emails, and you think, okay, this email has to be earth shattering. I need to really blow their minds. You know, what can I write? And that's putting so much pressure on your shoulders. So just take the pressure off, have fun with it. If you can have fun with your emails or pretend that you're writing to one person, if that makes it easier. Think of if it's a friend, a family member, could be an avatar. So, for a good example, is most people, good exercise is to come up with your ideal client, like who they are. And for example, not saying you'd want this person as an ideal client, but look at Homer Simpson. I used to watch The Simpsons religiously. I haven't watched it much over the recent years, but most people, even casual fans, know a lot about Homer Simpson. They know roughly how old he is, if he has hair or not, if he's overweight. They know where he works at the nuclear power plant. They know what he likes to do in his spare time. He goes to Moe's and has Duff beer. They know that he's married. They know how many kids he has. They know what kind of car he drives, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when you think of your ideal client, you can create an avatar like that. Now, I'm not saying you only work with that one person, but it's more for when you're creating and sharing your content. You're imagining, again, you don't want to work with Homer Simpson, he'd be a pain in the butt, but you're thinking of those traits. You're writing to a certain person. I did that when I first started, and I haven't used this as much now, but in the early days, I named my avatar Pat, and that was inspired by Saturday Night Live. There was a character Pat that people didn't know if it was a man or a woman because mine is split pretty close down the middle. I work with both men and women, so I felt weird making my avatar either a man or a woman because I felt like I was cutting off half the potential marketplace. But then I would imagine that I was writing to Pat, and that helped me in the early days. I don't need to do that anymore, but there's a little tip that can help people picture who you're writing to with your emails.
Myself. Does that make any
Mm.
sense?
Yeah, or what could be good is your past self. So let's say that you
Ah,
solve, oh, well, let's say you're a health coach who's lost a lot of weight, like 100 pounds, and you've gotten into great shape and you got all this energy and stuff. Well, this is a good thing to do for your whole business, but with emails too, is write to your past self. You're the resource you wish you had when things were so dark and you were binge eating and you were overweight, you were embarrassed to go to the beach, and you hated when friends tagged you into pictures on Facebook or so on. So you're writing to the old and that could be very powerful as well.
I just looked it up. It's called The Creative Act, A Way of Being by
Yes,
Rick Rubin. I'm going to
Rick
grab that.
Rubin.
Listen, I can't believe we are out of time. Marky, thank you so much for being with me here again. And before I let you go, do you have any final thoughts or advice? And where can our audience connect with you?
Well, thank you for the invite, Denise. It was good to be back. Any final pieces of advice? I will say it'll get easier. Robin Sharma has an acronym called Keep Moving Forward, KMF, Keep Moving Forward. So I would say that for sure with email. Don't stress yourself out by looking at the top of this mountain and think, oh God, I got to climb this far. If I had told Mark in April of 2016, hey, you're going to write over 3,200 days of consecutive emails, I probably would have freaked myself out and it would have made it harder. So it really is true. Journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. You just start writing that email, shoot for a month. That's it. Everyone can do a month. And then, that'll get the ball rolling. It takes usually 21 days to develop a habit. You're now past the 21 days. If people want to check out my stuff and if they want to get onto my email list, full disclosure, I email daily, as you know, but you can go to naturalborncoaches.com, naturalborncoaches.com. And again, the Facebook group's at thecoachingjungle.com.
Well, listen, everybody, thank you so much for being here. And in this powerful episode of Your Partner in Success Radio, my guest, Mark Mawinney, reveals towards the end of it, you see what I mean? By Friday, I'm like, I'm done. Reveals the secrets behind a successful email marketing strategy that has transformed countless coaching businesses. And we dove deep into how daily, yeah, daily, authentic communication can turn a simple email list into a revenue generating powerhouse. And he also shared his proven techniques for creating engaging content, building trust with subscribers, and to some degree, I don't think we got too deep into this. You can chat with him, monetizing your audience without resorting to pushy sales tactics. And from his three pillar strategy to the art of consistent daily emails, Mark demonstrated that success isn't about fancy funnels or expensive ads. It's about genuine connection and providing real value to your audience. So don't miss out on Mark's game changing strategies. As he just noted, head on over to naturalborncoaches.com. You can download his free email marketing guide and then go to, excuse me, join the Coaching Jungle Facebook group. And Mark, thank you so much. And listen, you are welcome to come back any old time. I'd love to have you
Awesome.
back.
Well, thanks again.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, listen, have a terrific weekend and we'll be back in touch. We've got things that we'll be, emailing each other about. And I know you and I have talked about this. I am starting, I have to start up again because I killed off my old email list. So I'm starting up again and I am going to do daily. I promise you
Awesome.
I am. So you're going to be my
Well,
creative muse.
feel free to add me to the list. You have my email, but if you want to add me to the list there, and if I have any feedback, I'll read them and I'll hit reply.
Oh, thank you. Well, I don't ever add anybody to anything without their permission, but you just gave me permission. Thank you. I appreciate that, and I will be in touch. So thank you, everybody, and we will see you next week.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffitts at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.